So New Yorkers have responded with unusual, I won't say uncharacteristic, but a stunning generosity and compassion to their fellows. I heard a story coming in today. A guy came up to me as I was coming in the building and said, saw the most incredible thing. There was a guy over there in a wheelchair. He's a double amputee, and he's kind of zipping around in his wheelchair delivering sandwiches to the volunteers and the people who are working. It's I think our view, the country's view of New York, may change in all of this. Bill Hemmer knows a fair amount about the volunteers who have been flooding in and the efforts they are making, and on the other side of that, what still needs to be done. Bill joins us now from the Javits Center, the major convention center in town. Bill?
Aaron, hello again from down on street level along 11th Avenue on Manhattan's west side. Two things strike you throughout the day here. One is the continued desperation along with the hope, and the other is the generosity. Let me show you the desperation. On so many street corners, we have seen signs for the missing, people posting them in numerous locations throughout Manhattan, trying to hold on to the possibility ultimately that their loved ones, their fathers, their mothers, their sisters, their brothers may be found alive in the World Trade Center. The other thing is the generosity. We talked about the enormous outpouring. The small things strike us too, Aaron. On this street corner here where the volunteers lined up, there are people here in Manhattan offering their apartment in case they need a place to sleep and a place to rest for the night here. We talked about the volunteers throughout the day today. We have one volunteer with us now. Keith is in from Boston. And Keith, you want to step up here a second? Thank you,
Sure can.
You were at the site yesterday. You just got back again today. Give us an idea for what's happening down there and the level of progress.
Oh, progress. Slow going, I mean steady, but everybody's got the same motive there, and that's to find survivors. So, I mean, everybody's morale is good. They're going for what they can, you know?
It is Saturday. The last survivor pulled out was Wednesday, 4 days ago.
Which is true.
When you're down there working, knowing that fact, what kind of feeling is generated there?
Can't really explain it. I mean, all that you just got to keep in your mind that what it would be like to be in that building, knowing there's people looking. That's what kept me going. I mean, somebody's in there. There's got to be somebody alive. So you just got to keep going. I mean,
will you come back tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be staying here. I mean,
as many times as they'll send you and you'll go.
Many times as I can go out there.
Many people throughout the day, Keith, have been coming up to us and making sure that we get the word out about what things are needed and what things are not needed. The one thing many people say that is needed is what you're wearing right here, this respirator.
Respirators, yes.
Tell us about why that is so useful down there in the site.
Well, what they have down there for the majority is paper dust masks, which are for sanding or sand and drywall.
We don't want those then.
No. These clear out 99.97% of the microns that would be in asbestos or whatever, and there's a lot of asbestos down at the Trade Center. It was built with asbestos, so I mean that's a major issue.
Keith, I am told though that these canisters here are replaceable, and that's what you need because they wear out over time, correct?
Yeah, I mean you'll get a day out of this, out of one canister.
So the canisters, the respirators, what else could you use down there?
Flashlights, batteries, respirators.
I'm told things like hats with lights, hard hats with lights, welding equipment, work boots, goggles.
From what I've seen, they had a lot of work boots. The welding equipment's taken care of. I mean, hats with lights, that's a little more than you'd really.
Okay.
I mean,
well,
most
you would
people,
know.
You could get a hat and a flashlight. I mean,
Keith, thanks, and best of luck throughout the week. And quickly, we want to pass along throughout the day, Aaron. We've been talking about where people can send donations if indeed they want to give. We've been talking about Shea Stadium and Giants Stadium. We're now told at this time that they don't want any more donations at that point. What we just talked about, though, is what is needed. You can bring that here to the Javits Center. Also, they're saying they're starting to turn the corner now away from donations to the financial end of it. And they say if you want to give and want to give money, they're giving out 3 specific locations right now: the American Red Cross, the Disaster Relief Fund, the Salvation Army, and the United Way of New York City. You can address it specifically to the September 11th fund. So those 3 things right now are starting to be pushed here on the streets of Manhattan. Aaron, back upstairs to you now.
Bill, thank you very much. Bill Hemmer at the Javits Center, not terribly far away from where we are. Judy Woodruff in Washington. Judy.
Aaron, as you know, Eileen O'Connor has been following the threads of the investigation after Tuesday's attacks, and Eileen joins us now with a major development. Eileen.
Well, it is very a disturbing development, really, Judy. U.S. officials are confirming that U.S. intelligence had two people, at least two people, on a watch list. They informed the FBI about Khalid al-Midhar and Salim al-Hamzi. Now, al-Hamzi lived with his brother Nawak al-Hamzi at a San Diego apartment. Al-Midhar was a frequent visitor at that apartment. Neighbors described them as quiet. They often swam in the pool. They would come and go, though, at times that were a little suspicious, but people didn't really think anything of them. Apparently, they were, though, on a watch list. And U.S. intelligence say that they did inform the FBI because al-Khalid had actually been captured on videotape in Malaysia, according to one source, meeting with a suspect in the bombing of the USS Cole. So all of these men associated with the bombing of the USS Cole. That, of course, has ties to Osama bin Laden. So these men, despite the fact that they were on this watch list, were living in San Diego, traveled, as my sources indicate, on to Phoenix. And one of them, then they met up with a man named Hani Hanjour, and he, we know, received flight training in Scottsdale, Arizona. We also know that these men purchased tickets on the Dulles flight. That is the flight that actually went into the Pentagon. So those people, two hijackers at least, that we know of, who actually went on the Pentagon flight, that Dulles flight that went into the Pentagon, were being watched before by U.S. intelligence, had told the FBI that these were people to watch because they were already associated with that bombing of the USS Cole. Judy?
Eileen, to be on a watch list means the FBI is suspicious, but they don't have enough evidence to do anything about it?
Well, they are suspicious, and they are to be monitoring their developments. But some reports say that some $50,000 worth of credit card receipts for airlines tickets were found in one of these residences or a hotel room that was used by them. So there was some suspicious things going on, and they met up with a man and actually lived with a man, Hani Hanjour, who was receiving flight training in the United States. So this is a bit suspicious if they were on a watch list and were being able to travel so freely. Judy?
Eileen, the question keeps arising. If so much information is now surfacing in the 2, 3, 4 days after Tuesday's attacks about these people, why wasn't it clearer before that these people could pose a terrible danger?
Well, a lot of people would say hindsight is 20/20. There's a lot of disparate pieces of information, and this is a very large country, and there are a lot of people. You know, the other thing, Judy, in tracking the threads of this investigation, what has been so frustrating for us, and what law enforcement officials say has been so frustrating for them, is that these men all use very similar names, very similar spellings. And they're also using cutouts, and that means that they're using people who actually died, the names of people who died. And so that makes things increasingly difficult. For instance, we know in this case that there were two men on that watch list, Khalid al-Midhar and Salim al-Namzi. Now, al-Hamzi had a brother, Nawak al-Hamzi. All of this very confusing, and it was Nawak al-Hamzi who actually rented the apartment. So it's only his name that shows up on the list. And you see, that's how they get around it.
All right, Eileen O'Connor, following the investigation, we can only imagine how much pressure there is right now on all these investigators at the FBI and elsewhere. Darren?
Judy, we heard Eileen there talk about the common links between many of the suspects in this case. You hear FBI investigators, also journalists trying to put together the picture of where these suspects spent their time and where they were and exactly what they're doing. With one of the suspects on board one of the doomed flights, that trail leads to Beirut, Lebanon, and that's where we find our Brent Sadler today. Brent, what kind of picture are you able to paint from Beirut?
Well, first of all, Darren, revelations that a 26-year-old Lebanese man is suspected by the United States Justice Department of piloting a jetliner which may have been sent to target the White House has shocked and disturbed his family here in Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley. Now, the man at the center of this is Ziad Jarrah. and he is alleged to be one of the hijackers on United Flight 93, which crashed in a field some 80 miles from Pittsburgh shortly after 3 other jets struck the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Ziad Jarrah's family here in Lebanon say that his profile, as far as they know, does not fit that of an Islamic fundamentalist bent on terror. In fact, his family here say that Ziad Jarrah enjoyed going to nightclubs, drank alcohol, and shared his life, but was not married to a Turkish woman.
He never acted or talked in a way that you could have an understanding that he might be related to this. He has his girlfriend, he goes to nightclubs, he drinks sometimes. His way of life can't be related to these parts.
Now, Ziad Jarrah's life away from Beirut began in Germany 4 years ago when he began engineering studies by proud parents who actually paid for that training, those courses out there. Jarrah also went to the Hamburg Mechanical Technical Institute, where 2 other suspected hijackers were also studying, it's thought, at the same time. Around a year ago, Jarrah told his parents that he was in the United States taking part in a seminar organized by the Boeing Aircraft Corporation that was related, he said, to his studies. After that, Jarrah returned to Hamburg, receiving yet more help from his parents. Later, he told them that he was going to Florida, was in Florida, training to be a pilot. They assumed all was well. Jarrah's last call home here in Lebanon came just 2 days before the suicide attacks, when he thanked his ailing father for sending him yet more money. The only time that Jarrah's movements raised concern here in Lebanon was when his Turkish girlfriend told his family that she thought he may have gone to Afghanistan with friends when they had separated for several weeks. Now, that is not being confirmed by the family. They say they have no evidence that he went to Afghanistan, and the family here in Lebanon is saying that they are more than willing to cooperate with the international inquiry. Back to you, Darren.
Brent, one question for you here. If, in fact, the family doesn't believe or is in shock and denial over what their son is accused of doing, what, in fact, did they think he was doing? Just that he was a student at all these places they were paying for him to attend?
Well, you have to look at the background of the family here. They're very well-to-do, well-educated, obviously have finances. They're a well-known family in the Bekaa Valley area, Sunni family, and they were convinced, they tell me, that their relative, that Ziad Jarrah, was doing very well in life. They had nothing, they say, to confirm any suspicions that are being raised now. In fact, he was back here in February to attend surgical work for his father, who had some heart surgery. He was here in February, and his girlfriend, the Turkish woman I mentioned, was back here only in August, just a few weeks ago, attending a family wedding, which Jarrah said he was unable to attend, saying that he was too busy taking examinations. Darren.
Brent Sadler in Beirut. Brent, thank you very much. Now, that's just the picture of one of the many suspected hijackers on board those planes on Tuesday. Our Miles O'Brien is joining us now. He's been not only putting together the picture of some of the others, but even more interestingly, seeing how their paths cross and how their circles kind of connect.
Concentric circles, you might call them. 19 suspects in all were on board those 4 aircraft. Let's first of all talk about the person we were just talking about, Ziad Jarrah, and that reference to Hamburg that Brent Sadler mentioned. Let's go to Hamburg, where the technical institute there, the Harburg Technical Institute, was a place where Jarrah was, along with Mohammed Atta, who was on American Airlines Flight 11. That was the first aircraft to strike the World Trade Center. And Marwan al-Shihi, who was on United 175, the second one. So Hamburg's an important place. Now, we're not sure about any sort of Brussels connection, but Brussels is a place of interest today as this investigation continues. Police there arrested 4 people who are linked to an Islamic fundamentalist group. 2 of them remain in custody. They had weapons to be used in war. That is the charge there in Brussels, Belgium, specifically Uzis. And there was some indication that they were looking for American targets in Europe. This all raises the question that what we're seeing is perhaps just the beginning. Perhaps some of the plan was thwarted. Now let's get back to the United States and see what we've got going on in the investigation here. First of all, Texas. Important point in Texas. There were 2 men or were arrested, or I should say detained, by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. Mohammed Jawed Azmat and Ayub Ali Khan, they have been transported to New York for questioning. What is perhaps most ominous about them is they were carrying these box cutters, which many of the passengers who called on the cellular telephones before the crashes indicated the hijackers were armed with. And in addition